Welcome, everybody. It is January 21st, 2026. This is a meeting of the Communication and Policy Committee of the Concord School District. It is 5:33. My name is Kara Meeker. I am the chair. With me tonight are members Alex, is it Dubois or Dubois?
Dubois.
Dubois, thank you. Barb Higgins, Sarah Sadowski. From the district, we have Karen Fisher-Anderson and Jack Dunn. Is anybody else from the district joining us tonight?
I believe Tim is going to come on.
Okay, that's right. I was wondering. Okay, so we may have a surprise visit from Superintendent Herbert. First and foremost, I want to welcome our new members of the committee, Sarah and Alex. This is what I think Barb and I like to call the best committee, where we
Actually, it is. It's thought-provoking.
Yeah,
I like it.
we get to really dive into sort of what happens in the background to make our district run in a healthy and efficient way. A lot of times policy comes to us because we have changes in legislation that dictate that we have to modify our policy to match state law and federal rules. So oftentimes we will be sort of assessing what's going on at the federal level, what's going on at the state level, and how that impacts what we do at the district, and then how we accept or modify recommendations from the New Hampshire School Board Association, because they have kindly provided documentation to us as recommendations on how we could adopt policy. And so we'll tweak it from there. Generally, that's the pathway for policy to come to us. But as members, you are also welcome to bring to the committee proposals for reviewing and assessing policy. That is a committee decision. It does need to be voted on in order to move forward for review. And also the board as a whole is also allowed to send us policy for review should they vote on it. So before we proceed, does anybody have any questions? Awesome. Glad to hear it. The agenda tonight is full, but I don't anticipate that we're going to deep dive on everything that we've got tonight. We are going to continue a discussion that Sarah and Alex will be joining for the first time on the parental rights policy that we looked at in December. We also have a revisit of policy 741 related to facility usage fees in the district that we have done recently. Like, we actually passed this policy recently, but it sounds like there might be a need to tweak the language further. So that's actually what we're going to lead the night with, because Jack Dunn needs to get out of here, but he's going to present that information to us, I understand. So with that, I will pass it to you.
Sure. So I'm going to hand something out to you. It's just the explanation from our bond counsel on the 50-day termination, and then a copy of the statement that they've asked be added to policy 741. So this stems from part of our legal requirements for the bonding is that they looked at our facility use policy. And in that policy, they want to make sure that when we rent to organizations, that we are treating them equally, and that we are not, I would say, supplanting them by supporting them by bonding at a non-taxable bond, but then you have a for-profit business or nonprofit or even a federal agency that is using our facility and paying us money when that would potentially impact the non-taxable bond. So these are IRS regulations. Yeah, there's various things. So no. So there's a number of components. So they had asked that a statement be added into the policy, or in a section in the policy, that allows us to suspend any agreements that we have in place in the event we're in danger of violating that. So if we had an organization that was a charity or sports league that used it 5 days a week, every day, basically running their organization out of our school every night, that would be an issue. It also has to exceed certain dollar guidelines from more I've tried to dive into this. So I think this is more just as a precaution that if for to ever happen, but I'm at $150,000 in revenue, I don't see us ever meeting the 50-day termination requirement, and that we're supporting.
If you get that much money, you have to.
Yeah, then I'd be violating the terms of the bond. So, yeah,
A lot of
there's always push and pull.
Yeah.
But they asked if we would mind adding that. I said I would bring this to the facilities, the Communications and Policy Committee, and it seems fairly harmless, but it does give us outs in the event we realize there is something that is, somebody is getting a financial gain from this that could hurt us.
Oh, sorry, Jack, I missed the subject of the sentence. Who recommended that?
Our bond counsel.
Thank you.
As they're going through their legal requirements to approve us for, to go out to the bond market, this came up and they
Thank
wanted
you.
to review the policy, so that's where this stems from.
Great. So, and everybody should have in their stack a policy, which is, I believe is the second one in our stack. It's policy 7741, facility use fees. And you'll see on page 3, there's a highlighted section 8.
That's where it's at.
Which is the language that we are discussing. My understanding, Jack, is that this language already exists. This highlighted language, is any of this new or is it all new?
The section D8 would be new.
So we don't currently have,
No. This is the language I just handed you out, which Karen may have retro into 941, is what they
Seven.
proposed
Yep.
the language be in.
It is. It's
Yep.
the same.
okay. For some reason, I thought that we had included language that the superintendent could, at their discretion, cancel a contract. So there's no language that we're taking out. This is all additional language?
This is all additional language specifically to what they requested.
There is something in there, but it's much more general in nature, with regard to what you're talking about, Kara. There is
Yeah.
something in there just really quickly about her or their ability to, but
Maybe this is, we land, the very final sentence, any renter who violates the conditions of this policy at the discretion of the superintendent may be ineligible for future facility rental. Maybe that's what I'm
That's sort of
thinking.
similar, but
Yeah,
I don't feel like this is redundant, though.
no. From my perspective, anything that puts our bond at risk is certainly worth noting. And so, unless anyone has any issues with this language in particular, or would like to negotiate the language in any way with our legal counsel, I would move that we go ahead and approve this for the full board at first reading. Is that, I'll open it to discussion. Does anybody have any continued questions?
I think it's pretty self-explanatory,
Mhm.
and it's not coming to us from a disgruntled human, it's coming to us from a, legal standpoint, so I'm pretty comfortable with just inserting it.
Me too, seconded.
So this entire clause here is being added in, or was there part of it?
The whole thing.
It looks like the whole thing is being added.
This was one of the, we spent so much time on this. What is a group, and what kind of group is a group, and what's a school group, and what isn't a school group, and who do we charge, and how do we charge? It's a simple thing that's complicated.
Right. I guess that's what, I will ask district staff and excuse me, do you think that this could lead to an impression that we could essentially ruin someone's day just because, by saying, well, we're one day out, but we don't want you to rent here?
We would take the approach that they'd have to define 50 days. Is it an 8-hour day? Is it a 12-hour day? If they're using it an hour a night, like we have Parks and Rec that comes and use it. And I went through these examples with bond counsel. So what accumulates up to 50 days? And I could not get a clear answer on what is equivalent to 50 days, because 24 hours is a day. So am I taking 50 times 24? How deep do we want to go into it? Based on all our rental usage, I don't see where we would violate this at all. This was more to satisfy them.
Okay. Can you explain then, because I see on this sheet, the issue with the 50 days, the explanation of 50 days, but the language that's being added does not mention anything to do with a 50-day termination.
Right.
What I have is just that basically at any time, for any cause, within
Yep.
1 day of the rental, we reserve the right to cancel it.
Right. And they didn't want to tie it to one specific piece because there's more components to this 50-day.
So I guess my question is that you know, as an administrator, as a staff person, that there is some kind of termination. I guess I don't quite understand the 50-day piece. If we're not including it in the policy, but we're saying that we know that there's a 50-day termination clause.
Would it be acceptable that if I asked them, could we footnote this and add at the bottom as a reference that this section was added and note why it was added? I mean, obviously, it gives you broader powers with this phrase beyond those 50-day termination, but I want to say that's bond counsel probably being overly cautious for any reason that would come up beyond even this. But this was the one they highlighted to me.
Okay. 50-day termination.
Yeah, but the 50 days should, if that's something we can enforce, we should be transparent about it, like it can't not exist in there.
Is this something we could put in the rental agreement, the paperwork they fill out?
Yeah.
When they sign up to use it? Could we put it in?
Oh, we could
there?
add,
Oh,
yeah, we have
pursuant
this.
to
Yeah.
Pursuant to D8 or whatever.
Yeah.
If, blah, 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 blah.
Potentially,
Mm-hmm.
just to put them on notice when they're applying for it.
Yep.
When, to explain the
Sure.
difference.
Right, as long as it's explained.
Yes.
As long as it's transparent that this
Right,
is it.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, the 50 days is a number that has been created, been recommended, but it's not state law. or
It's
federal
IRS,
law. It's
IRS reg.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
so
federal
an IRS reg.
regulation, yeah,
Well,
so,
so maybe we add that IRS regulation to the
yep,
li-
then I
legal
have that,
references in the back as well,
sure.
if we're gonna move it forward.
So is there any mention of 50 days
No.
anywhere in this?
No.
No.
Okay. What I will say is, I think that it would be good to, because we need to advance this, I'd like to, I would love to accept a motion to move it to the full board, at which time, maybe if there's a conversation that can happen between now and then, if an amendment needs to happen
Yep.
on second reading to satisfy this 50-day
perfect.
language, then we just have an opportunity to
Yeah.
do so.
Not a problem.
Well, because I don't want to hold this up for like a whole
Yep.
month while we're thinking about it.
Yep.
I think that this is recommended language by legal authorities, and I'm happy to, accept what they have, but I think it would be nice for the committee members to have time to absorb the information around the 50-day termination piece.
And I'll ask them, based on this conversation, further clarification,
Okay.
and we'll also show you in the section of the rental agreement on the software that they fill out, where we would add that. So you'll at least see all that at the February 2nd meeting.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion to move 741 as amended to the full board for first reading?
So moved.
Moved by Barb Higgins, second.
Seconded.
Seconded by Sarah Sadowski. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look at that. Look at this. We're already got stuff done. Okay. So real quick, I just wanted to get that out of the way because I know Mr. Dunn needs to leave. The other things on the agenda are the parental Bill of Rights policy, as well as item 4 on the agenda is 541.2 unauthorized communication devices. Number 5 is policy 580, which relates to student records and access. And then number 6, which is reviewing a draft of whistleblowers protection policy. 541.2 has come before this committee, but the other 2 haven't. So why don't Karen, would you mind just letting us know why 541.2 is on the agenda tonight?
Because we were wondering, it did not appear, when I went back and checked my notes for November, it appears that the committee, to my recollections, we didn't meet in December, made a motion and voted it forward to the full board for a first read, but it never got there.
Yes.
And so we wanted to revisit it to be sure we could revive it, send it forward, and maybe even recommend, it's a very brief policy, as you all recall, maybe a page and a half, we waive the first read and get it to the board for second read first time, if you all think that's doable. A copy has been provided. We didn't make any changes to it. We just wanted somehow, things got busy around the holidays and
Right.
it just never made it.
Awesome.
Is it 541.2 or 542.1? Because it's both
Looks
ways.
like 542.1 is new.
542, let's see here, I got it.
It's just different on the
I
agenda.
think it's a typo on the
Yeah, but
agenda.
I wasn't sure where the typo was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the agenda is wrong,
thank you.
542.1.
Thank you.
And let me just say, that's my bad. So we had visited this back in November. And we shortened it from what was recommended by the New Hampshire School Board Association because we wanted it to just be a lean, straightforward policy that reflected the cell phone ban that went into the RSA. We moved it to the full board just completely by accident. It never made the board book. And when we don't notify the public through the board book, we tend to just wait until the following month. And in that time, the holidays happened and everyone's minds were erased. So there's really nothing to do about this policy unless for some reason someone wants to revisit the language. Otherwise, we just had executive committee. We let them know to add it to the board book for the February meeting. So we will hear it in February. I did ask about the possibility of bringing a motion to skip first reading and just go right to second reading. The president did not love that idea. So we're gonna go ahead and proceed with first reading in February, and then we'll hear it in second reading in March. Is that all right? Like, as far as like, the RSA is already being followed in all of our schools and in our classrooms. Things seem to be going well and smooth. So I think I'm okay with allowing it to go through its natural course. Is that all right with you, Karen?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Yep.
Does anybody have any comments or questions about that policy before we set it aside? Great.
We were also worried about that heading into it, and it's been so
Yeah,
seamless.
it's amazing how well students just did what was asked.
Yeah,
And even they will admit that they talk to each other more.
yeah.
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 So, because they were all working from the same,
Well, I
ground
have,
lines.
my neighbors teach at the high school, and the number of kids that check out board games,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when they have open periods, instead of scrolling on their phone, they're sitting on Main Street and playing board games and stuff, which
I
is
love
just
it.
kind of
That's great.
cool.
And so this policy was written prior to the state law that had passed this year?
It was
No,
because
it
of the
came
state
after.
law.
Awesome, okay, in addition to the supplement.
Right. So it really just, it reflects exactly what's in the RSA, but making the point that the RSA is actually pretty vague in terms of how we discipline, how we, like what's considered a pocket or a locker, so we as a district made some choices around what we think
Would work for our kids.
should be in the policy, which is to keep it broad, to allow our administrators to determine the age-appropriate storage and discipline that they think is best for their school. Because otherwise, an elementary school student is not going to have the same, discipline,
Right.
Strategies as a high school student. So then we would need to parse out in policy how that would work. So we left it broad.
Yes, Alex, if you go to any of the school handbooks, you will see at all the different levels, there's a lot of much more guidance in the handbooks for parents and students as far as, more meat on the bone, if you will.
Right, because I'm looking at the consequences section, and it pretty much just said that here the superintendent gets to decide, or
Yeah. And in the handbook, there's a whole there's a rubric in there for disciplinary things, and so,
like with first offense, second offense, and whatnot.
yes. So, that's how we did that.
Great. Any other questions? Great, all right. Moving on, we're gonna go back to the top of the agenda regarding policy 262, New Hampshire Parental Bill of Rights. This is brought to us, when did we talk about it? Was it November or December?
I think we began it in October, and then, November, we talked about it. I got guidance from Will. We were gonna talk about it in December, make the decision, and it got canceled because of the weather.
That's
They
right.
didn't meet in December.
That's right. All right, so to recap and to bring everybody onto the same page, the policy that you have before you reflects what is in the bill that passed. So Section 2, the New Hampshire Parental Bill of Rights, has, all parental rights are reserved, and then it goes through a list of all the things that are, that passed in the bill about the rights of parents, and it's 1 through 19. Additionally, part of that bill passed that asks school districts to develop policy around parental responsibilities in the school district, but don't really list specifically, if I remember right, don't list specifically what that is. It just directs school districts to craft policy. This came to us almost exactly as recommended by the New Hampshire School Board Association. And the first discussion we had was around, why does our policy, as recommended, include the list of the Parental Bill of Rights, which is just a repeat of the RSA, but doesn't include any recommendation for that other piece, which is that we need to craft policy
Right.
around, this other aspect of parental responsibilities within the district, or communication. Like, there's like a list of things we're supposed to do, communication and things like that. So we had sent a message to the New Hampshire School Board Association legal representative,
Will Phillips, who's the policy
Phillips,
writer.
thank you.
Yeah.
To ask, and he said that they were actually actively working on that second piece to come up with a recommendation. And so we just decided to hold off until we got more information from them. I don't think they have come out with any.
Not yet. The legislation with EFAs and all of the stuff that is out there pending, they're probably going to provide specific guidance. They were hoping, last email that Wilson said maybe late January, early February, but with everything that's going on, they're pretty snowed under. So we've not seen anything yet.
So, sort of from my perspective, I pushed back on this recommendation a little bit personally, and I don't know if Barb did too. I know Liz also had concerns, which is that the RSA directs that the Parental Bill of Rights be stated on the district website and in all district handbooks,
Yep.
but it doesn't direct us to create policy specifically stating what the Bill of Rights are. And so it seemed counterintuitive to me
We're publishing an RSA.
to
in our
publish an
handbook. Yeah.
RSA,
Yes,
but
I remember this
but to
conversation.
not craft policy pursuant to the other piece of the bill that, so I kind of wanted to hold off on it. And I don't know if, Karen, you still feel strongly that we need to move forward with this language.
No, I think in that we have posted the Parental Bill of Rights on the SAU website. It's in the handbooks. It'll be in the annual report. And the fact that when I first looked at this, I thought, okay, when I drafted that policy that you have in front of me, I included a lot of the board policies that are already in existence that pertain to some of those specific parental rights.
Right.
And so Will said, well, you all are both right, but he said, we're going to continue to break it out a little bit more and provide even more guidance. And so when he told me that, I said, all right, we're going to just get this through the board, and you're going to come out with a new policy, and then we're going to have to
Yes.
revise it.
Thank
and
you,
we have
Karen.
a lot of other things to do right now.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are.
Okay. I feel very confident that because we are in compliance with the RSA in terms of posting it in all the places that we have been required to do so, and we're waiting on recommendations from the New Hampshire School Board Association, that I don't feel any urgency in moving or discussing this further or moving this forward. I want to open that up to discussion and questions.
I would agree, just because logistically speaking, in real life, we're doing what we've been asked, and so at this point, and a lot of this is common sense anyway, which doesn't really matter, I guess, but I don't feel, until we have more guidance on the second half of this, then we could do all this work and then get guidance that says everything you did is wrong. So I think it makes sense to just ride it out a bit and see where it goes. I mean, that's just my thought.
Completely agree. And I share your reservations around listing an RSA. I mean, why one RSA and not another?
Right.
I think it leaves us vulnerable to perceptions of,
Right, like we're choosing this. and
exactly,
we're
picking it,
excluding
cherry
this.
picking what legislation we follow, and we follow all of it.
Right.
And it's tough. I mean, this is something we talk about a lot, which is how much of the RSA needs to go into our policy. Do we just reference the RSA? Like, do we just say, well, this policy is here to state that we follow the New Hampshire Parental Bill of Rights pursuant to RSA, blah, blah, blah. Or do we write it out?
And here are our recommendations as required.
Exactly. So, it's a balance. Sometimes I think, the point is well made that sometimes people just want to see the words. They don't.
Yes, that
they
was
don't-
what, that was my, I remember, like, I'm
Yeah.
that parent. Where is it? You
Where
need to
is
show me it.
Right. And if it's
You know,
not in the handbook, if
Right.
it's not on the website, if it's
Right.
not everywhere else, I can understand why we would need
Yeah,
that
but it
language
is.
in policy, just to say we
Yeah.
have it somewhere, but I feel like we're pretty well covered here. And I don't think that we are at legal risk of waiting on this.
No,
per
I would
se.
agree. And with the way things are going, as we talk about one of these other policies, you're going to see that more and more the parental bill of rights, that legislation is huge, very far-reaching. And so we're going to continue to see it. So we have time. The notice requirement has been met. That was what we really
Yes.
wanted.
Yeah, perfect.
So, tangential, but also related though, I'm sure we all saw the notices about taking photographs and video. Audio, video of our students. And if I remember right, we actually cut that out of the cell phone ban policy because NHSBA had added that in. We were like, why is that even in here? So we cut it out because we wanted that policy to be streamlined. But do we need policy around the audiovisual permissions? Knowing that
It's
it might
interesting
change.
because after they passed the legislation, I think, is it LAD? One of the
Yeah, Lad is in
Lad is
chairing
saying,
it, yeah.
that was not our intent, that this should only apply to, it should not apply to public, but to private entities, and so, who knows what's
There,
going on.
and I went to the deliberative session yesterday.
Yeah, great.
It's today. Yeah, Tuesday. So yesterday, man, the week seems longer than it is.
Yes.
And they did go back and they have done an amendment that will go before the House. And their amendment is that it was never intended to include community and outward-facing events, so
Like a
such as
football
our
game?
theater,
Can't watch
football,
it on TV
etc.
anymore?
I took a moment to also testify on other instances that we would be using video and audio recording for student learning purposes that is not outward facing, and that, I said as a parent and as an educator, I understand concerns around students' likeness and stuff being shared out over social media and whatnot, and I plan to go to the House with others to advocate. Student Travis Dunbar came along with me to speak on behalf from a student perspective, but just trying to urge them as they consider amendments to this that we are looking not to limit instructional opportunities, learning opportunities, creativity and innovation on students' behalf. Notice that they reference digital learning portfolios in 306 as a potential graduation requirement.
So, okay then.
But they were very. They heard what was being shared, and they did pass approving several amendments that will be before the House. So.
Thank you for doing
And
that.
just further clarification on it, since it's the parental bill of rights, is that clause about photos and videos, is that saying that the schools will not do this, or is it saying that the parents have the right to say that they don't want their child?
So it is an opt-in.
Yeah.
And it currently, as written, which we are currently following what is written, we need to have parental permission for students to record students' audio or video. It does not apply to photos, and it does not apply to non-school entities, so to speak. So, independent 501c3s at a sporting event, at a theater performance can do it, but an individual employed by the Concord School District cannot. And right now, as it's written, unless we have opt-in permission from parents, we shouldn't be doing it in our class as part of our instructional practices either.
Well, it used to be like a blanket permission and you could opt out.
Yeah.
And
Seems logistically a
that's
bit
what
easier.
the change is right now. Is it is an opt-in. That's the big change. So currently we have about it was like 1,800 and some odd that permission granted, and 21 something still out there remaining. So
So I'm going to ask an example. So I'm a high jump coach, and high jump is technical, and so I have my phone out and I I record my high jumper, and then we look at it, and oh, here's this mistake, and then we do it again. Would I need parental permission to do that?
As interpreted right now, yes. As Senator Ladd elaborated on yesterday in that session, he would say that was never the intent of it, but they are working to clarify it. So I do believe that soon we'll receive new guidance coming out of the New Hampshire legislative body to.
I run track camp, and one of the things parents sign off on is, we do videos. So I post them on the Barb's Track Camp page and all this. If you do not want your child in there, let me know. And every year I get 2 or 3, and so I just make sure that they're either blurry or they're not in it. But yeah, that would be.
Even football. Football's the same way. Practice games or scrimmages or any of that stuff. Drama, music, performances, rehearsals. No can do right now.
I'm optimistic that soon we'll be able to continue those activities. It was unanimously voted to move forward the amendments to the House. So.
Oh, that's
so. Yep.
So maybe we won't need a policy.
I love it.
So, well,
Wouldn't that be
well, we
nice?
still
Let's not
have
make
the
policy
opt-in
that we don't
permissions
need.
for the in-class instructional purposes, and we have worked with Dean Egger, our legal counsel, how we can put this forward in our annual update. We're still getting about 70% of those returned a year, so there's still a big gap. We have to really focus on that effort. But optimistic that things that Travis Dunbar was eloquently spoken when he said, in football, my technique needs to be studied, or else I can,
Right.
injury
You want to watch
can
other
be
teams.
avoided. Yep.
I mean, films and football is
So-
huge.
So it was a good experience.
Great, thank you for doing that. Any other comments or questions around the Parental Bill of Rights policy, other than to note that we are going to put it on hold until we receive further guidance from the New Hampshire School Board Association? Great. All right, and that brings us to new things. Karen.
Yes, I have some fun for you.
We have student records and access as well as whistleblower protection. Which one would you like to?
The first,
pick up?
580.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, Kara, before we jump in, I don't want to assume, and I apologize if I'm making this too simple, but as it took me a while. So, as new members, I just want to be sure. You probably already know this. Where to find all of our policies? You go to the SAU website. You go to Board of Education. You get on a policy, and then it clicks up between 100 and 900. They're all separated out by subject matter. Anything from I'm sure you probably know this. Okay. So I wanted you to know that's where they are. We currently have 222 policies. I do have an Excel spreadsheet that I created when I first came on board, and we track where our policies are. And one of my duties is to track the legislation, come up with what's coming down the road, talking to the superintendent quite regularly on the hot topic issues, and then deciding between Tim and Kara, what do we need to get to? That's the prioritization. But as Kara said, even though I keep a list of the the high value topics, I call them the biggies, like we're going to have to go back and look at bullying, student violence prevention, and so on and so forth, because there's been some new changes, but that's where you find them all. So if one night you can't sleep and you're wondering, hey, gee, I wonder what's happening, they're there.
I don't envy you having to keep up with all the changing policies.
Well,
Way too many
I will
commas
know-
and hyphens and
Oh, my Lord. Yeah, well, so.
And you make me think that one of the reasons we shouldn't be in RSAs is just how much more work it creates when you have to go back and change the. If we insert the RSAs and then they change there's a bill this year around broadening restraint and seclusion, for example.
Yeah, which
If
we
that
just
moves-
changed.
Yep.
Right.
So-
So if that moves
Just
forward,
it, yeah.
Yeah.
then we're
So we're always trying. It's good faith effort. And so,
222 you say, huh?
222
And actually,
currently.
if anybody wants to nerd out, Liz and I both requested physical copies of all the policies last year, which the district made for us in binders.
big binder.
Yeah, the binders.
And if you're a tactile person, I highly recommend. It's just nice to have.
I'm all about control find.
Okay.
Then I'm not.
All right. Good.
So with that said, the reason I am bringing you Policy 580, and I'm going to pass this out because I didn't ask Bridget to include it. This is, what I'm passing you out right now is the current policy, because there's a couple of changes in there. I always go through and I make changes or I cross out, and I want you to have for comparison's sake, if necessary. So 580 deals with student records and access, also known as FERPA. You'll hear that acronym used a lot. This issue is ripe right now because of the Parental Bill of Rights. Specifically, we have a couple of committees, well, we have one in particular that meets. It's called the Behavioral Intervention Team, where there's a lot of people on the committee, both educators, psychologists, school counselors. We have JPPO with us. We have the Chief Detective of Youth Services with us. It's a big gathering of a lot of different talents in the room, which we're very blessed to have. By the way, they all sign non-disclosure agreements, so we cover that. But within, when we were looking at the new Parental Bill of Rights, I started to get nervous about some of the language in the Parental Bill of Rights that talks about data gathering, record and data gathering, and, parental consent and all those kinds of things. So I had a very nice long conversation with Dean Eckert, and we're working on our Behavioral Intervention Team manual, which really it's called CARES is the name of our group, and we have one at the elementary school level, and then we have a second group that involves middle school, high school students. So in order to be sure that we're covering ourselves and also being transparent to our parties, i.e. parents and everyone else, when we look at our student records and access, one of the things, the legal definitions, it talks to, and you'll see this soon, it talks about educational records, what they are, and then it talks about legitimate educational interests. And so what I had to do on advice with Dean, and I thought it was a great thing to do, is when we're talking about legitimate educational interests and who can see information and for what benefit, I specifically went in there and included the behavioral intervention teams within our instruction on his advice, so that if we get challenged, we can say, we may lose, but we still put it in there to be transparent and to provide notice. So that's the biggest change. That's the reason I went in and started looking at 580 again, because we had updated it, I want to say back at it was early when I got 2021, we had worked on this. There are not a lot of other changes. I can go through them fairly quickly, but that is why I wanted you all to see this tonight, because we both feel that not only updating our manual is important to cover us under the Parental Bill of Rights, but also to be sure that that particular team is listed in our instruction to give us, permission to be able to share that information. Mm-hmm. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah. And
Okay.
would you say that everything in here, so any language being removed in the draft is stricken, and any language being modified or added is highlighted in yellow?
It is.
Okay.
There's maybe one or two exceptions that when I went through it again today, because I worked on this a while ago and I put it down and I went through it and went, I missed one. But it is very similar to what we have, except for when we worked this policy the first time, there were some decisions made. And so as going through this, I wanted to point out to you why, as we walk through it, whether you read it and I take questions or however you want to do it, I can address why some language is in here that if you had the New Hampshire School Board Association go by in front of you, it wouldn't be in their policy, but it's been in ours.
Mm-hmm.
So I can point those out to you when we get there. So however you want to do it.
I would say, why don't you, because I'm noticing, there's the highlighted section on page 1.
Yep.
There's stricken language on page 2, and then highlighted,
Yep, I'm happy to do that.
unless anyone wants to go over changes from who to whom, he or she to they, happy to skip over those. We can go right into any substantive stricken language, any substantive addition language. If
Perfect.
you could just walk us through that phrasing.
You got it.
And then I think it'll go pretty fast, because I'm not seeing a ton of changes here.
Nope, there really aren't. So obviously, our first paragraph is usually always purpose, and one of the things we've been working hard at is trying to streamline or standardize policies so that our formatting and the way we do this is similar. So it's the purpose is laid out. We certainly want to be in compliance with Family Educational Rights Privacy Act, which is FERPA, and its regulations. So we talk about the educational record, and that's really important as to what it includes when we're talking about our students. It's very, very broad. Basically, it includes pretty much everything we do on a regular basis. One example I can give you in the definition or under educational records in paragraph B, where it talks about at the very, very bottom of that paragraph, education record, it talks about records which are in the sole possession of the maker thereof, and are which are not accessible or revealed to any other person except as a substitute. In my position, I carry a logbook because I talk to a lot of different people about a lot of different subjects, and my memory is like, whew. So I keep notes on every conversation I have and what advice I give. That would not be an educational record. That is my personal record. That would be outside. It's outside. It's ancillary too. And when I go home or I finish a logbook, it leaves the building. But if a case comes up down the road and we need to know, what did I say about that, or where is it? I have it, okay? But that B just defines what is an educational record. The next paragraph under B that starts with upon termination, I just want to point out that this is a best practice. When we put this policy together initially, we added this information for those employees who are leaving to protect the information. Make sure you surrender any student records that you might have or information. So that is not in the New Hampshire go-by, but I'm recommending we leave it in there. I think it's a best practice.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What about special ed records?
We maintain those.
But that's not under this? Because, that would be an IEP a year, it would be all the testing, it would be all,
Yeah, we keep all of those records.
well, that I understand.
Yeah.
But is it,
It is included.
Okay.
Let me see. Let's see.
I haven't read all the way through, so I apologize.
Yeah. They are all records, documents, material contain any test scores. We keep grades, we keep attendance bar, we keep everything.
Yeah. Oh, that I know.
Yeah.
And I remember, some
an
students have a
IEP
lot and others.
Yeah, and with the extension of the IEP, or the length of time that kids can stay in school now, I believe it's now up through
22.
22, so to 23, we maintain those records, and then beyond that as well, in accordance with the law, so
Okay.
those would be covered. So
Perfect.
Directory information, it's pretty, I'm sorry about the last draft had S apostrophes, we looked at those, they're gone, or they should be. The highlighted portion that you referred to, Kara, on page 1 at the bottom, in the New Hampshire School Board Association go-by, that is the same language that appears on page 2 at the end of the first paragraph. They just moved it up.
Okay.
So I moved it
relocated
and I
it.
struck it at the end.
Okay, great.
Okay. Paragraph D defines, again, what personally identifiable information is, and I made some word changes. You'll see those, such as, whom, so the semicolons instead of colons. I just really just said, I'm not going to try and be creative, I'm going to follow. Para E, a FERPA definition of parent, that is new in this, so I wanted to make sure I highlighted that. In this particular revised edition, it was not in our previous one. And then in paragraph F, on the annual notification rights of parents and eligible students, we do this every year within the first 3 weeks of school. We go out, we notify parents, and we tell them this is the information on page, under the directory information, C1 through 7, that we like to list on our students. And if you don't want that information or anything specific, please let us know and we won't include it. So that, again, that's a notice requirement. Going down on page 3.
Can I stop you there real quick? We've stricken in a local media outlet notice.
Correct.
Is that still on the books as law somewhere else?
For some reason, we used to put it in the paper.
Yeah.
And we no longer do that. We just decided to go, but that was stricken, so.
Okay. I'm just saying, if it is required.
No.
Okay, great.
No, this is, and then on page 3, when we refer to our principals, since we have so many of them, we talk specifically about the building principal. And so I inserted building before each time principal is used, depending on, what the issue is.
We just need to add one on paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4 of G. Looks like there's a principal without a building.
We'll make the needed arrangements. Yeah, thank you. So,
Could be the shed principal or the outbuilding principal.
so.
ADU principal.
Yeah.
Let's see. Again, on page 4, when we're looking at the decision, and this pertains on, beginning with paragraph H, it pertains to correcting educational records. if either a parent, and when you read in here, you'll see eligible student, and you might wonder, what is an eligible student? A student starts to own their educational rights at 18. So that makes them eligible to say, I no longer want my parents to get X, or, I grant permission or whatever else. So H, paragraph H, deals with the decision-making matrix we go through when a parent or eligible student comes through and says, hey, there's something wrong, incorrect, I believe, or misleading in the educational records, and that's the process that they go through to be able to make the changes. Okay? And then as you go through on page 5, and let me know if I'm going too fast, these are the changes. I went word for word with the new revised New Hampshire School Board Association. So on the bottom of page 5, except as otherwise provided by law. The biggie and the whole reason I started this exercise is on page 6, as I said, where we talk about school officials with a legitimate educational interest. That's the standard by which we have to be able to justify why we allow some people access to our kids' information. So hypothetically, let's say I, as Karen, had a student last year that I was very fond of, helped, through some tough times, and that student did well in my class. The student then goes on to the next grade the following year, and I'm curious and want to know, how's that student doing in biology this following year? Technically, I don't have a legitimate educational interest in knowing how that student is doing, because that student is no longer my student, and I don't have anything to do with biology, okay? So it talks about and defines a legitimate educational interest, and then it goes down further. It talks about you have to be employed by the district or be providing institutional services or functions, so that's, think in terms of some of our contractors, and then medical staff. Our school resource officers specifically included here. She plays a unique role. Attorneys, sometimes consultants, and we covered volunteers, because sometimes volunteers are privy to certain information depending on what they're doing, so we wanted to make sure they were covered. This comes right out of the New Hampshire School Board Association go-by, with the exception of, as you keep going down, the new definitions, you've got A and B. Underneath B, that's where I included members of the district's behavioral intervention team are considered school officials with legitimate educational interest in reviewing student behaviors, coordinating support, and maintaining the safety and well-being of all individuals within the school community.
I would think special ed case managers as well.
And
Special ed case managers. Like if
they're part of. We discussed all of that at the behavioral intervention team.
Okay, because I know, like when I was a special ed teacher, all those kids were my kids, so I had a legitimate educational interest to look at every grade, and sometimes kids that I had discharged from service but were still identified, I could look and see how are they doing, even though I no longer was directly teaching them. Mm-hmm. Would that still be?
Technically, I would say, what's your legitimate interest? I know you're curious.
So my legitimate interest is if I'm their case manager and they still have an IEP, we have signed off to see how they do without services for 3 months. Mm-hmm. Me seeing how they're doing.
You're still their case manager.
Correct.
So they are still assigned to you.
Correct.
Then you're fine.
Okay.
It's if, let's say, a year later.
I get it.
Because sometimes out of good faith, how they doing, what's happening.
Checking up on somebody.
We had that situation in a big case of ours where we had a teacher who was checking on and doing college things for a student that they had no interest or no real reason doing that. And so we want to be careful.
Right. No, I get it.
Yep.
That's why I'm asking, because it's always the gray which is most of life. But
Yep.
Okay.
So
I'm just trying to think of reasons I would go and grab a file of a student I might not have worked with for a while, and it would be that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and Barb, I'll say most times it's well intentioned.
Correct.
But it is a privacy issue, and if
Yeah.
a student
Yep,
then
yep.
says, why are you looking at my records?
Right.
We have to be able to justify. So,
Got it.
so that's the big change. And then what you see lined out is language that is no longer under the disclosure under Roman numeral I-1. That language has been removed on page 6. And then, as I said, building principal was inserted. Further on, under K, disclosures made from educational records, on number 7.
On
Page 7.
I had a question about the top of page
Sure.
7. number 5, organizations conducting certain studies
Yep.
on behalf of the district. Could you explain the strike through on the approval process?
Well, that was actually part of, initially in the old instruction, it was already in there, following approval by the superintendent. But when I say at the bottom, additionally, any such studies must comply with Board Policy 592,
Okay.
that's the permission you have to get for
the-
surveys, educational things from the superintendent.
Excellent. Great.
So,
Thank you.
no, great question.
Appreciate that.
And could you define predictive tests? Is that in reference to regular classroom assessments? Is that state testing, district testing?
Dr. Herbert, would you happen to know what a predictive test refers to?
I had a
That's a
very
great
similar
question.
question,
Remember the
Alex.
ASVABs, where you take those tests to see what you'd be good at when you grow up? Maybe that's a predictive
I'm
test.
wondering if it's like voc rehab or something of that nature, but I've
that-
never actually seen the term of predictive test.
Should we ask Siri? Good?
Question. Yeah, that's a great question.
Because by the definition of predictive, you could it could be loosely applied to just
Anything,
anything
yeah.
that is
Predictive of academic performance, and, you know,
Right.
Well, and I think perhaps that's
Maybe
kind
the
of the
purpose.
point.
I'm
which is
thinking of,
that
like-
we're keeping it broad.
Yeah.
So that
ASVAB tests for like military
That's what I thought,
service.
the ASVAB, that's what I said.
Kids, where are their strong indicators? Are they going to be good mechanics? Are they going to be good?
so predicting the future, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, where are their strengths?
Those
I
IJ,
take one of those tests now.
introvert, you know.
Things change.
Yeah, they do. I'm guessing, but that's what I think it is.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah,
I
great
do.
questions.
I'm wondering if I'm trying to look it up real quick, but Wi-Fi. If we can include if it's not too long, the title of Policy 592. So
Absolutely.
Additionally, any such studies must comply with Board Policy 592 regarding
Yes.
receiving permission for.
And just so I can be complete and tell you, it is what the exact term is. It's the one that deals with, 592, non-educational questionnaire surveys and research.
Yeah, I think that would be nice context to have.
And it is, although Kara, it is
Especially-
spelled out at the very end under legal
in
references.
the citations.
Yeah, I did put it there,
Thank you.
but if you want it there as well, I don't think there's any harm.
And does 592 currently reference the Parent Bill of Rights, number 10?
No. No, not specifically. Which is one of the things, once we start we're gonna have to go back and cross-reference, so. So do you
Maybe
do want
it'll
it
be
both places?
repealed by then. Yeah, I mean, I understand why we wouldn't, because the citation is there. Nope, that's good. I think that it is, anytime we need superintendent approval, we like to mention it. And so, just to add weight to what we're talking about.
Yep.
And it creates a series of steps to follow. There's always safety in the protocol.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I understand that the title of Policy 592 doesn't actually allude to superintendent approval anyway, so I think I'm okay.
Okay. And then the last line outs on page 8 pertain to the disclosures from educational records and talks about what's included, who wanted to see the record, when it was made, and their order of, they only had 5, when I say the New Hampshire School Board Association revised policy had the 5, and they were out of order from where we had them on 8 through 12. So I went ahead and those are now in the correct order as the go-by is, and struck those that are no longer in the instruction. And then everything else, I updated the legal references. I did take out, but I'm happy to leave it in if you think it's of help. In the last policy, we did have the little star which indicated the definition of an eligible student. And I defined that right below that last paragraph above legal references. I'm happy to leave that in there if you think.
Well, what about students subject to guardianship? Because they wouldn't qualify just based on age. You could be 18 plus and subject to a guardianship agreement, so
Yep.
you don't have the power to consent.
True. So maybe we'll leave it out.
Yeah, that would be my advice.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, could we revisit just why the stricken language of 6 through 12. Can we
Sure.
just go through that one more time?
Yep.
I was listening, I promise.
No, that's fine. In the current, the one policy I just handed out,
Yeah.
we had them listed in different order, and we had more of them. So when I went in and I looked at the new revised copy from the New Hampshire School Board Association, if I can steal, if you look at it, what's there under disclosures, you'll see that those first 5, and they're in that order. So I struck the ones that were below that were out of order or no longer applicable,
Okay.
or if they'd been moved up.
So you're saying, like, for instance, the nature of the disclosure is no longer relevant?
Well, for example, number 2, under K, where it says in the event of a health and safety emergency on page 7, and then you go to page 8, and that was 12 before, and it's been struck on page 8 because it was already addressed. So all I did was revise this go by to reflect the New Hampshire School Board and did away with the others, the extra 3 that were no longer named.
Right, but for instance, so just looking at number 11, let's say, so like 12 became 2, awesome, got it. 11, the nature of the disclosure. Does that now exist?
No, that was not included in the new revision.
Okay, so you're saying that that language is not necessary?
Correct.
Okay.
So it's just 1 through 5 in that order.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the changes to policy 580 regarding student records and access? I will say, this is meaty, this is new. Sometimes we are all really good about doing our homework and we come ready to go. Other times, we're all working and living and struggling. So maybe this is the first time you've seen the language. You are absolutely welcome to say that while I don't think we've made any amendments tonight, that if you would like time to sit with the policy before we move it to the full board, let me know now. Otherwise, there is time built in the process of bringing it to the full board, which is that we bring it for first reading. That means we just let them know that we are introducing it, and then we have an entire month to address any needed amendments. So if there are no major issues, or if you don't want to sit with it any longer, you still have that month to come to the table with any issues. I don't see any issues. I think this is pretty straightforward. It reflects the go-by. I noticed a couple extra periods here and there with the changes. I have no doubt that
They will disappear.
magically disappear.
And the A's and B's and C's will be Roman numerals as consistent as.
We're gonna do
The
Roman
others.
numerals?
Yep.
Okay.
Roman numerals
I
followed by the.
wasn't gonna say anything.
No, I started to ask, and then I said, you know what, let me get through the substance first.
Yeah.
Once you're happy with it, then we can work
I
on
know,
it.
we'll do and then it's silly, but it looks like we changed a lot of the numbers to italics in that record.
I did, and only
Oh.
because it was a formatted change in the go-by, but if you don't like
No.
that,
I love it, it's pretty, but if we're gonna do it, we have to do it for number 8 as well.
the health and safety emergency. Yep. Thank you.
And then could we maybe add in some sort of explanation for predictive tests, as say like including but not limited to ONET, ASVAB, etc. Or
Yeah, I looked it up.
Tell us.
Oh, yeah.
So
What do you
the
got?
initial definition speaks to medical, so like a genetic or medical predictive test, like breast cancer, those kinds of things. And then the second was employment and behavioral predictive tests. So to assess a candidate's potential success for a job with measuring cognitive skills or work. So a predictive test that we use all the time in special ed is a psychological evaluation to get an IQ and an academic evaluation. And we use those scores to predict student success and what kind of services that student might need to succeed. So I think any sort of assessment test specific to a student, to one student, is a predictive test. You could look at the SAT as predictive. How well suited are you to go to college? We'll take the SAT and see how you do. So it's almost a redundant word, quite honestly. I mean, any assessment is predictive in nature. You use the results to formulate opinions of the taker and what they may or may not be able to do. But I like Frank over here. Alex is when I can't remember a name, I just go to Frank. So I like that lays it out a bit.
And you said what? Emotional? You had some buzzwords which I thought were really
Yes,
good.
this is-
Emotional.
Yep.
So we say
Employment-
including but not limited to.
So this number 2 was employment/behavioral predictive tests to assess a candidate's potential for success in a job by measuring cognitive skills and work style behaviors. Examples: the predictive index assessment, dominance, extroversion, patience, and formality, helps match employers with roles. And then key concepts were, pre-symptomatic, predispositional. That was a bit more medical. Predictive value, though, the probability that a test result would indicate what you think it would indicate. So I just go to special ed right away because so much of what we use, but important considerations, ethical and social impact, clinical utility. It's interesting.
Yeah. May I ask, because what happens when we start to introduce language of examples?
Right.
Then we actually create exclusions.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Ah.
Oh, it's not there.
We're establishing intent. So a predictive test to a
pretty
special
broad.
a special ed person may be very, in your mind you're like, okay, these are the predictive tests that I'm talking about. But actually there are many applications. So
Right.
my only concern for adding language
Right. Is now
we've sort of, by including some tests or definition that we are creating.
Even if we said but not
exclusion
limited
added.
to?
We can certainly do that. I guess my question is, not what's the point, but like, is it helpful to the reader to have examples of predictive tests listed, would be my only question to you.
I would think that it would be, because I looked at it and said, well, what is a predictive test? And I would imagine that parents and other stakeholders reading this policy would also probably, if they're reading it word for word and going through it thoroughly, it might jump out at
course
them
they
as
do.
well.
To me, a generic definition of a predictive test is any assessment that is being used to formulate future services for a child
And that
or
might be
future.
the thing to do, is just give that broad definition, because it goes across all demographics or, things.
Like a
we
lot of
might
our,
do an
like a lot of our
assessment for.
yearly I think of MCAS, that's Massachusetts, but you know what I mean, they have new names every year. Those aren't predictive necessarily, we use them more to assess our own success in educating our students. Oh, look, our third graders did well this year. We don't, so now sometimes we use the results to reformulate curriculum for the following year, but to me, that's not what this means. It's a test some student took that's in their record that's used to predict future success or behavior or whatever, with the idea that we'll use those results to formulate an IEP or a diagnosis. The numbers have to be a certain way to be diagnosed with a learning disability. So you give a test to see.
Right.
So,
And thinking with special ed, I wonder if that would also include like rating scales, the ones like where parents and teachers are asked to rate behaviors based on frequency, or because it's considered part of the testing battery, but
Yep.
on the surface it doesn't actually look like a test; it's more of a questionnaire.
Right.
And
Would
it's
it be
non-academic
wrong
questions.
to change predictive tests to assessments?
I was just thinking the same thing.
actually, that might make
Because
really
then
good
we
sense.
we eliminate.
We eliminate.
Instead of the.
It's weird language.
Well, I mean,
You like that, Alex?
I assume it's there
Assessments?
because this is relating
predictive
specifically
assessments,
to
or-
I wouldn't do
organizations
predictive
that-
assessments,
So,
but,
Predictive tests use data to forecast future outcomes.
well,
That's the first sentence of when AI gave me this answer. Most commonly seen as predictive genetic tests. Predictive
what
index.
if we just said tests?
And using just assessments then makes me kind of think, well, does that include formatives and summatives? Does that include
right.
classroom assessments, or is it formal state assessments?
So, and because again, this is specific to organizations that have been brought in on behalf of the district. So the chances are that they are performing some kind of test at
Educational.
at the request of the district. They're conducting tests, they're conducting assessments, they're doing analytics, whatever it is. So we want to keep that broad, whatever the district might contract an organization to do. And so I would favor either just saying administering assessments or tests, or administering tests, so that we're not,
Because assessments would cover it all.
Issue.
If the word assessment's in it, it's
I think I
covered.
like using assessments
Yeah.
better than using predictive. So
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Is that okay, do you think?
Yeah.
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 I think,
And I mean, obviously, a quick check of the RSA. Sometimes we get into these conversations where we're like, this term is stupid, and then we realize it's in the RSA, and they are making us use it. So it's always good to just check it against the RSA. Not that the RSA is stupid. for
well, and I'll
anyone
go
that's
back and look
listening.
at 592 as well to
They
see
can
if
be.
there's any correlation there.
Yeah.
So,
But
okay.
yeah, let's see if we can modify that to make it
Okay.
more straightforward. Thank you. Anything else?
No, but
Um,
Alex's insight makes me think about how number 10 of the Parent Bill of Rights, how that would be, it's a non-academic questionnaire. It's an interesting point that a parent would have to opt
In,
because
Yes.
that's part of
And
diagnosing.
what
And
happens if you don't have, if you have two guardians and they are not in agreement?
I feel like 592. We could bring it up and read it, but I think only one parent has to say no.
Correct.
Yeah,
I believe you're right on that.
yeah.
Yeah, but as far as non-academic assessments, that's interesting.
I think the questions that we have are, we can wait to have Karen come back with the change in that language. But I think barring any issue with the RSA, I'm okay with, if you guys are just amending it to administering assessments.
yeah.
And then if we're good, we can move it to the full board for first reading. How do we feel about that?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel good about it.
All right. Do I have an official motion?
So moved.
Barb Higgins, seconded.
second.
Seconded by Alex DuBois. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. We are moving, let me say the number one more time for my notes later. Moving policy 580 as amended to the full board for first reading.
Great.
I already feel good about our committee. Not that I wouldn't have, but
Here,
here's,
here.
well, here's what I like about it. So, I'm not a, I use this, I'm not a telephoto, I'm not a telephoto. You are. I'm like a, ooh, you know, like you need
Big
different
system.
ways of looking at it. So I'm the one that's like, all right, I'm the parent, explain it to me. And you're the one like, well, let's look at this word. Now, what are the Perfect. You're that way too, so. Well, and so are you. So I'm the balance. Wow.
There
On
you
the
go.
teeter-totter of policy. All right, guys, we are doing great on time. It
Yeah.
is 6:40. Karen, if you guys are feeling good on time, do you want to go ahead and bring the whistleblower and let us know
Yeah, that'd be great.
what's going on?
I would love to, if you don't mind. This
No,
has been
please.
out there for a long time, and I'm going to confess right up front. This was a policy that came about because Ellen DeGeneres.
Desmond.
Just weighing in. Thank you.
Yes. Ellen was audited, our federal grants program was audited and did very, very well with the one recommendation they said that we should have a whistleblower protection policy. It's because of the fiscal implications. It's not always just fiscal, it could be many other potential violations. So, of course, I went to the New Hampshire School Board Association to try and find a go-by and shopped around. They don't have one. It's not a required, it's a recommended. I looked at I've looked at New Hampshire RSA 275E, which deals with labor, and it has a whole go-by on Whistleblower Protection Act. It's Roman numeral XX111, so I guess that's 23. Yeah, it's 275E. It does a bunch of the definitions. I also looked at, this is how far afield I got. I looked at Manchester. They had something close. I couldn't find it today, but I had in my notes that I looked at Manchester. And then I looked at, just when Kathleen handed me this pile of paper a long time ago, she had something in there from the University of California, Berkeley. So I looked at all of those, and what I did was I took a took a risk, and I just looked at the statute, and I looked at some of our other policies, and I thought less is more, but we still want to cover it. And so I put together this quick little policy on kind of the purpose, who, what, where, a little definition, what our reporting procedures are, the fact that we will try to the best. You can be anonymous if you want to make a whistleblower complaint. We will always try and protect your anonymity. That's what we'll, what the violation is for false reporting, how to report. The big thing when you look at whistleblower is making sure, and as I'm sure you know, that we protect people from retaliation. So we want to put right in there that we protect them against retaliation, and then that's in there. Also, what the investigative process is, and then I followed our distribution and training language that goes in most of our policy, and then the legal references. So it's a pretty quick. If it's too quick, I'm happy to go back and do more. But it really is to satisfy, to make sure we have something, because right now it's listed as 812.1, and really I asked Ellen to go back to her people at DOE and say, if this is part of our federal grants, do you want it in our 900 section as part of our federal grants? So that's, if you all care, that's the other decision that you could weigh in on to say where you want it.
Of where it goes.
Can I ask, when people report things, I'm thinking about union contracts, is what I'm thinking about. How does this align with existing contractual language around employees that may come forward with a complaint or may need union representation, or, like, is there any marriage required between, like,
Our collective bargaining agreements?
yeah, just any language in the collective bargaining agreements, and
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
or even just the grievance procedure,
Correct. Yeah.
No, I don't think there's any whistleblower in the grievance procedures either.
I always, it doesn't matter what kind of investigation it is, talk about retaliation.
Right.
But again, even though this pertains to, it could be federal, state, local law, gross management of, or public funds, you're gonna see the intent of this, as I said, if it's from the fiscal point, it could be danger to health and safety. So,
right. Well, so for instance, false reporting, a whistleblower who intentionally, which, how do we find that out, makes a false report of wrongdoing will be subject to disciplinary action.
right.
So I'm just thinking about worker protections.
I don't know that any of our collective bargaining agreements, and I can go back and look at them, go into that much detail.
Well, they're afforded due process,
Yeah, so
and
in accordance with
yep,
CBA.
and we must have just cause in order to discipline.
To terminate,
Yep.
yeah.
So, I mean, that's about the scope of it, but due process is pretty spelled out.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Now, I am more than happy, having put this together a long time ago for Kathleen and sort of put it on the sideline because it was less and less of a priority than the others, to go back and find others if you want for comparison, if you are unhappy in any way, or just want to see what else is out there.
I would be curious if there are other policies that clarify that you are still a mandatory reporter and that I'm curious to know if the average person reading this policy would understand that this is mostly fiscal related, because the way it says anything they consider to be illegal, dishonest, unethical, or otherwise improper leaves the door open. We do not want to be absolving anyone of their responsibility to be a mandatory reporter.
Okay.
We could put an exclusionary, this is
great.
a
Yeah,
separate issue,
yeah.
because mandatory reporting is student safety, not.
Yeah,
But
the
I'm
abuse and
not
neglect.
sure. I'm curious if
Right, the average person reading this, right.
Right.
They think, oh, I better not say anything, I don't want to be, or I can
Or
say.
I said something, but
Yeah.
to my supervisor, not to the,
Right.
the authorities. I'd just be
Yeah.
curious how other policies handle that delineation.
Yeah. I agree. I think the mandatory reporting piece is
It should be clarified somehow.
Right. And I'm also just thinking, like, we just did so much work on the harassment policy and the in-depth language of the investigative process
Oh, yeah.
around harassment. But whereas this policy has just 4 points on the investigation process. I love efficiency in language. I'm all for it. At the same time, just, I think I would like time to sit with, why this and what lane are we in? And because of that lane, it's okay to have a abbreviated investigation process as opposed to harassment. But because what if the whistleblower is talking about harassment? Does that mean that this officially becomes a 161 issue? And should we write that in, that there are certain topics that are exclusionary, like would not defer to this investigation process, it would
Yeah.
move to
Yeah.
161.
Or and to your point, do you want me to look at narrowing it to the fiscal? Although it was, I mean, that's where it came
No.
up, but again.
I might still have a job if Concord had one of these 15 years ago.
Could have been
So-
whistleblowing all over the place.
Yeah.
That's what it was. And
Well,
here I am.
Oh, excuse me.
So you like the broadness, you like the.
Well, yes, I think, having said that, I mean, depending on the nature of the whistleblowing, if it were, I'm being harassed and was threatened that if I said I was being harassed, I'd blah, 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 that might go that could be deferred. If there's a delineation of, this covers, here's the process, unless the process would be more suitably covered in a different policy. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, because we sort of look at it when the complaint comes in and decide, where does this belong?
Yes,
Is this
exactly.
harassment?
I mean, we do that now with many things.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Is this fiscal?
Right.
Is this,
we
what
do it with
pot does
student
it belong?
issues and,
Yeah.
is this a behavioral issue? Is this so,
Unethical conduct would go back to like the, code of conduct type things.
Correct.
Teacher.
Which may
Yeah.
be, honestly, something we would write into the investigation process
Yeah.
for whistleblowing, right? Because if this is a
Right,
major
yes.
broad stroke violation of federal, state, or local law regulations, right? Abuse of authority or unethical conduct. The initial investigation should probably assess, what actual policy it may fall under. Because federal law may trump this investigation process if it's harassment related, if there's sexual misconduct, a specific danger to public health and safety, maybe it's gun related. Like, so
That's
whatever the whistleblower is saying is going to immediately get assessed for.
To determine what policy it
determine where it
falls
actually
under, how we
Exactly.
investigate it. Yeah.
So that might be helpful to have written as part of the investigation process, which is determining where it really belongs.
I'll go
What-
back,
what
and even if I have to go to the college or university level, again, UC Berkeley was kind of out there, but I have it, it was kind of interesting. So,
West Coast.
come now. We need some Yankee ingenuity in this thing.
I know, true.
So I would propose this. I think we have a lot of really different and interesting perspectives on the committee. I would like to take this, before we meet again, for all of us to look at this and think about it from your own frame of mind and your own professional and personal experience and how you would envision this fitting in, as well as Karen will maybe dip into a college or university level whistleblower policy that maybe could help clarify language, and then we can really dig into it the next time.
Yep.
I think that's
And
a
if,
great
if
idea.
anybody is curious and wants to do any research, if you take a look at RSA 275-E:1, to your question, I'm just looking at this, it has no effect on bargaining or common law rights. So it's pretty clear in here in the RSA, so maybe I just need to lift more.
Yeah.
From the RSA.
Just to make
So
it clear.
that might be more helpful,
That's great, and that's the clarification.
those kinds of, and it has a public employee complaint investigation process right in it as well, so I got a little too brief.
No.
Well, no, but I
That's
just, better to have to add than have to what do we take out of here? Blah.
2026.
Too many
babe.
words, yeah.
Yeah, efficient policy in 2026. Okay, well then, no motion is required on that. We're gonna go ahead and just spend a little thinking time, and we'll come back and dig into it next time.
Okay.
With that is the final thing on our agenda. Does anybody have anything they would like to bring to the committee before we adjourn for the evening?
The only thing I wanted to put out there is for your reading pleasure next time around, and we will have files. Do you all know about, has Bridget talked to you about our team sharing? Okay. because I always try and put these in there in advance if you're curious and can't sleep and want to read. The next time around, we're really anxious to try, and Terry Wolf would be with me to talk about our AI, our student internet access. And she has a kind of a go-by that they've been, I was part of the group in the beginning, and then I faded out because of the technology. So we have that, and then deep fakes. So that's kind of a preview of what's coming next. And then behind that, pretty quickly, there aren't big changes, but there are some significant changes on bullying, student violence, with regard to cross districts and cross state lines that we'll just need to update.
Oh, yeah, that's easy now. With
So are you saying you're going to have the existing or new policy in our board books for next month's agenda?
If you all like, so we'll do whistleblowing and AI.
Yep.
And then I'll have bullying ready in there. If we
Okay.
get to it, we get to it. If not, that would be the carryover.
Okay.
Because I know we meet in February, but I don't know if we'll meet in March with budget.
We just
I think we do
said
meet.
yes to
Yeah.
it.
We don't have a definitive date because of hearings and such.
Right, we want to make sure that that we respect the budget process. So when we're all pulling out our hair on March 1st and saying, I need a night off. But policy tends to be the one committee that does continue to meet during the budget process, just to continue forward motion. Because especially we have some really great conversations in here, and if we pause too long to continue that conversation, we end up having to restart it, which I think is just not a good use of everybody's very important time. So it's nice to just kind of keep it rolling. But we'll keep you posted. And, and you let us know as well.
I'll put them in there, and if we get to them, we get to them. If we don't, we don't.
Great.
So,
All right, with that,
keep moving.
anything else from our new committee members, existing committee members?
No,
All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Moved by Barb. Anybody want a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Sarah Sadowski. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned at 7:54.
See, aren't these fun
Or sorry,
conversations?
6:54.